So, are you ready for more punishment? So, let's go. So, we're going to carry on with the idea of freedom and imprisonment, and a lot of the things that we are looking at, the ideas of kind of right view and how we think about the world. In a sense, it is about the kind of imprisonment of the mind, how we are imprisoned by the realities of life. And this next little sutta is actually a sutta that I have talked about here before, I think when I was here last year. And it is a sutta that is kind of autobiographical of the Buddha. The Buddha is talking about his own understanding of life before his going forth. And this is found in the Attakavaga of the Sutta Nipata. It's one of those very inspirational parts of the Pali Canon. It's all verse. And when we're dealing with verse, it's kind of very inspirational. We should really read it in Pali, you know. Because it's interesting, because the Pali kind of flows very nicely. The Pali often has a rhythm to it. It's called a meter. The idea of meter is that there is a certain number of syllables, and the syllables have a certain pattern to them. They are long syllables, short syllables happening in a certain pattern. And so the Pali kind of flows beautifully, whereas when you translate into English, all of that is lost. This is kind of just whatever. So the Pali often is much more kind of delightful and attractive than the English translation, because when you translate, you have to translate meaning. It's very hard to translate poetry into poetry. If you try that, it's almost impossible. You know, you have to be you have to be kind of way more intelligent than anyone I know to do that. Even Bhikkhu Bodhi can't do that. Even he refuses to do that. And if you try, you often lose the meaning. So you have to choose. Okay, should it be beautiful or should it be meaningful? And the Buddha said it should be meaningful. Remember the first verse we had, the poets who write into nice poetry or whatever, people like those, but that's kind of not the point. But you lose the inspiration a little bit. Anyway, this is from the Attakavaga, the chapter 8 in the Sutta Nipata, and this is one of the older parts of the Khuddaka Nikaya. These are found also in ancient or what is called Middle Chinese translation. The characters used in China about 1,500 years ago, and found in various forms in different places. So this is how the Buddha reflects, and what we will see is that the Buddha kind of feels kind of imprisoned by the world. This is kind of what we are seeing here. So when you see that imprisonment, well, then you want freedom. You want to get out of your cell. You want to find that tunnel that takes you out of the cell. Has anyone here been in prison before? No? No? Okay, good. Well done. Okay, so you haven't been in prison, because if you go in prison, you want to dig a tunnel to find a way out, right? So I don't know if any one of you have dug that tunnel before. The real tunnel is called the Noble Eightfold Path. There's a nice story. Ajahn Brahm has many of these kind of remarkable little things that he has done over the years. He's done so many things. And he's a person with lots of energy. Actually, these days his energy is not so great anymore, but he used to be very energetic. He used to say, when you come out of a real samadhi experience, he says, you feel like a nuclear reactor when you come out afterwards. So this is the nuclear reactor of samadhi. So when you are a nuclear reactor, you can do many things. That's kind of the idea with nuclear reactors. You have a lot of energy. And so he used to write all these stories, and he wrote one of these stories for a magazine in the United States called The Inquiring Mind. Have you heard about that magazine? It's kind of a newspaper. No, haven't? Okay, you probably haven't lost out very much. That's all right. I'm being very naughty. I apologize. I think monks should also be a little bit naughty. I think that kind of makes life more interesting. And so he was commissioned by the Inquiring Mind to write a little article about them. And he wrote this called The Story of Mo. And Mo was, I think it's from Moha. It kind of, his name means delusion, right? Moha. So this is kind of Mr. Delusion, and Mr. Delusion is in jail, right? And he's in jail, and jail is like the world, the world of the five senses and all of that kind of thing. Yeah. And then eventually he kind of finds his way out of this jail by digging the tunnel. The tunnel is a noble eightfold path, and he gets into liberation and freedom afterwards. It's a really nice little story. And I think if you search Google on Ajahn Brahm and the story of Mo, I think you should be able to find it somewhere on the internet. You can read that story. It's always kind of entertaining. So the Buddha is a bit like this. You recognize that you are in jail. You recognize that there's a problem here. And instead of just keeping on decorating your jail cell, why not get out of jail instead? Instead of painting your jail cell, nice pink or red or blue or whatever, or paint up the jail cell. Maybe get out of that jail cell instead of just kind of painting it and making it look nice. So this is what the Dhamma is all about. Whenever we try to kind of make do with the world as it is, what we're doing is we're painting that cell, putting a few pot plants in the corner, but we're still in a bloomin' cell, and that doesn't help all that much. So let's have a look at this. I've got so much coffee on this retreat. It's really nice. Coffee for breakfast, coffee here, coffee for lunch, coffee after lunch. Then in my little foyer over here in the room, kind of the little kitchenette over there, there's coffee everywhere. There's kind of coffee machine, there's coffee up and down. It's very kind of you to look after my well-being. I really appreciate that. I'm not sure, is it my well-being or is it my, anyway, coffee poisoning here. No. Coffee prison. That's exactly right. Coffee prison. Okay. No, that's true. So anyway, I know I really appreciate that. That's very kind of you, and much so that's how you get so many hours out of me every day. So that's good. So let's see what the Buddha has to say in this particular sutta. Taking up arms, Attadaṇḍasutta. Danda is a stick. And this is like punishment, so it is a bit like taking up punishment. This is the idea here. Do you have the word danda in Malay? You do. Fine, punishment, right? Okay, there you are. So so you can. It's kind of very interesting how many Malay words are related to Sanskrit. It's kind of really extraordinary here. So Anyway, so let's carry on. Let's get rid of this one. Okay, so peril stems from those who take up arms, take up danda. Just look at people in conflict. I shall extol how I came to be, stirred with a sense of urgency. So this is the Buddha speaking. The Buddha is talking about what happened to him before his awakening. So this is kind of part of that right view that ultimately leads you out of prison. This is kind of the idea here, to that freedom. So he is looking around the world and he's seeing all of these people in conflict. They're taking up the sticks, they're punishing each other. And when he sees this, he sees the punishment and the conflict and the problems in the world. When he contemplates that and he understands what is actually going on, then you come to feel the sense of urgency of getting out of this. And so a very important point here is actually to understand what is conflict, what is punishment, what is arms, what is wars, where do these things arise. And very often I think we have a misunderstanding of the nature of our world. We think that our world is somehow moving in a certain direction in a kind of linear way towards a better world, a better thing. This is kind of the underlying ideas that we have about our society and the world. I mentioned this before, and we see many people, I think I mentioned this before, already forgotten 90% of what I mentioned yesterday, but whatever. And there is this feeling, people write about this, how a world is always getting better, and etc., etc. And there's a sense of progress. This is kind of a very Western, maybe Christian kind of idea, the idea of progress, that we're going somewhere. The world begins in a certain place and it ends in a certain place. And then we kind of make progress from that beginning to the end. The Christianity is very much based on this idea, and I think many religions are. God creates the world, and then you kind of go through a certain number of things, then you come to the end of the world, and it's kind of we move along that kind of line, that linearity of things. But this is very, very different viewpoint from the Buddhist viewpoint. Buddhism is kind of fundamentally different from that. First of all, from a Buddhist point of view, there is no creation, there is no first point, there is no Big Bang where everything started. It just goes back more and more in time. There is no first point, but nor is there a last point. If you just keep on doing the same thing, there is no way out. It just goes round and round and round. So instead of having this idea of linear time, we were moving from point A to from alpha to omega, whatever you want to call it, these beautiful letters of the Greek alphabet. Are you masters of Greek? Do you know any Greek? We used to, in Europe, you used to learn Greek in school, but this is kind of 200 years ago, so I never learned any Greek. But I know alpha and omega, these are kind of the letters of the Greek alphabet, the beginning and the end. They often signify the beginning and the end of something. And so this is kind of a very Western Christian historical way of thinking about the world, linear movement. But Buddhism is about circularity. It's about going round and round and round, coming back to the starting point. Our lives are like that. You get reborn. Rebirth doesn't really exist in the Christianity that we have now. Actually, it was part of Christianity a long time ago, but not anymore. And the idea of rebirth is an idea of circling, going around. But even on a more micro level, if you look at your life, how it is, it's often about kind of going around in circles. I don't know if you have noticed your mind. Sometimes it's kind of embarrassing to tell other people how your thinking works, right? Because your thinking is often just like that. It just kind of goes in circles. You think the same thing again and again and again because you cannot find a solution. You kind of bring that thing back into your mind. If you look at what happens in meditation sometimes, there's this loops, and it's this circularity, even on the micro scale. Or in our lives, I would tend to get irritated by the same things or excited by the same things round and round all the time. But on the very large scale, the whole universe is like this. Universe starts, it goes in a circle, and it comes back again. The Buddha talks about the idea of the loke sangvatati and loke vivatati. And sangvatati and vivatati is basically evolution and involution. It has exactly the same meaning. The word evolve. Volve means to roll in the Latin language. Greek and Latin, not just Greek. So Latin language, volve means to roll. So you have the car Volvo, which literally means the thing which rolls. That's kind of why it's called Volvo. Now you know that. and then the E is like out. So you roll out. Evolution is exactly the same thing as when we have the word vivatati. V prefix, vatati means to roll. And then you have V, which means kind of roll out. The universe rolls out. That's what we are experiencing now. And then it starts to kind of roll together again. Sangvatati, the opposite of evolution. We don't have a good word for that in English. I don't know, involution doesn't quite work, but you know the idea. And so Buddhism is a very different way of thinking about things, because if things are circular, coming back, then there isn't any real meaning anymore. There isn't any way forward. There isn't any real aim. There is no real purpose. It's just the same things happening again and again, and that's kind of disheartening, if you like. And this becomes one of the really big reasons for wanting to get off. And this is where Buddhism becomes linear. When you move away from the ordinary life of the world, the way the world works, move from that and you move onto the spiritual path, On the spiritual path, Buddhism also has an idea of linear movement. The idea that you start off on the Noble Eightfold Path, you practice that path until you reach awakening. That is a kind of linear sequence. Suddenly there is a goal, there is a purpose, there is an end point in all of this. And that is the distinction here. And so what the Buddha then, in this particular sutta we are looking at now, what the Buddha is talking about, is this idea that conflict is part of the cycle of things. It cycles. You don't get out of the cycle of conflict by simply being part of it. It comes back again and again and again and again. And the feeling that we may have now, that some people write about, that you kind of the history is going linearly, we have less violence, less wars, less problems in the world. That is just a temporary kind of thing. Yeah, for a while maybe there is less violence, but then it comes back again. The cycle kind of returns, and then the wars restart. And that's why we now have so many wars around the world. You know, Ukraine, Middle East, and then many, many other places as well. But these are kind of the two main conflicts maybe going on right now. And that is very discouraging when you see the world like that. It is discouraging. It makes you think, well, maybe I should look somewhere else for my happiness. Maybe the wrong place to look for happiness is the world. Yeah, like I said the other day, what if war comes to Malaysia? Yeah, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Maybe you're going to flee to Jana Grove. It's a good place to flee, right? Hiding in Jana Grove. But then war comes to Perth. What are you going to do then? And ultimately, it doesn't really matter where you go. That's the whole point. It doesn't matter where. There is no fleeing from these things. Yeah, it is everywhere. It is part of the human experience. Human societies are made in such a way that these things will happen. And this is where you feel the sense of urgency. I have to get out of this. I can't really. There is nothing here to really be held on to. If I'm clinging to suffering, if I cling to these things. So. Then what? I saw this population flounder like a fish in a little puddle. Seeing them fight each other, fear came upon me. Yeah, the Buddha, this is the Buddha to be. Fear came upon the Buddha to be. So this is no small thing. If he sees this, or fear, I think is bhaya, I think the word probably is here, which means also like danger. Yeah, danger came upon me. Danger, fear, seeing the problem. Like a fish in a little puddle. It's this sense that the whole population, we are together in this little puddle. This little puddle is like the planet Earth. We have to share this planet together, but actually it's a fairly small place. Especially in the modern day, we move around very fast. We are all in this little puddle, and we're thrashing about, trying to kind of find a way through this puddle, trying to find a place of peace where we can be kind of happy in our little house. But then you start to see people fighting each other. This is what we're seeing when you kind of turn on the news or whatever. And when you see that we are all in this little puddle, all trapped on this planet, and you can't really get off this planet. And if you think that you're going to be like Elon Musk and travel to Mars, guarantee there'll be more fighting on Mars. You can't get away from the fighting just by going to Mars. Mars doesn't have any less fighting than the Earth, because you're going to bring people with them. You bring people with you, same things arise, because same delusion, the same moha, which is the source of the fighting, you take it there. And then you want to go from Mars to the rest of the galaxy. You want to kind of put human beings throughout the whole galaxy. And the point is, it's just an illusion. It's just stupidity. I'm sure Elon Musk is intelligent in some ways, but in other ways I think he's just really deluded, to be honest with you. What is it going to help you to kind of inhabit the whole galaxy? It's like this adventure almost. Yeah, you go travel over the whole galaxy, but actually you cannot get away from the things that you're trying to escape. That is not the escape. The escape is by doing the right thing here and now, by meditating, by living with kindness, by doing all the right thing. That is how you get out of this. Because everything is just a little puddle, and everyone is floundering, everyone is thrashing about, trying to kind of make this puddle work. But then we end up fighting each other. And when you see that, and when you see that there is no escape from that, then fear comes upon you. A sense of danger, a sense of urgency arises. The world around was hollow, all directions were in turmoil. Wanting a home for myself, I saw nowhere unsettled. The world is hollow, there's nothing substantial in the world, there's nothing to hold on to, there's nothing behind the facade, there's just the facade, and behind that there's nothing. And because of that, everything is always impermanent, everything depends on cause and conditions, there's nowhere to stand, there's no ground which will support you. Anytime at all, the carpet will be pulled away, the rug will be pulled away from under your feet. And when that happens, you will stumble and you will fall. And so all directions are in turmoil, based on impermanence. Nothing is really reliable. Wanting a home for myself. How can you find a home when there's so much turmoil? A home is a place of safety, a home is a place where you can hang out, a home is a place where you can withdraw from the world and find a refuge from all the uncertainty. How can there be such a home when everything is in turmoil, when everything is uncertain, when there's nothing to hold on to? A home is like a place to hold on to, but there isn't anything to hold on to. I saw nowhere unsettled. Nothing is unsettled by impermanence, by dukkha, by non-self. This is found everywhere, and this is kind of the issue here. So this is the how the Buddha to be sees the world, before his awakening. And of course this comes through clear seeing, understanding what is actually going on. This is what this is about. So why is this the case? Why is the world like this? Why is it that there is no solution in the world? And one of the most kind of beautiful statements of this in the suttas, I haven't included it here, and I have mentioned it here before, many times probably. But this is found in the famous Sakapanya Sutta. Yeah, the sutta I mentioned the other day, that when we went to India, we went to Sakka's cave, the Indasala Guha. And that is where Sakka asked these questions of the Buddha. And I mentioned this when we were there. And one of the questions that he asked, and it's one of these kind of really remarkable questions, and how it takes someone extraordinary to ask the most obvious of questions. And that is that question, that why is it when everyone wants to live in peace, when no one wants conflict and problems in the world, why is it that there still is conflict in the world? And it's such a good question, isn't it? We all want peace, but how come we haven't got peace if that's what we really want? And then the Buddha analyzes that, and it takes it back. He says it's because of desire and all of these kind of things. And he brings it back to the root cause, which is this papancha, this proliferation of the mind. And that papancha is again rooted in the sense of self. And because the sense of self is a given, that is why we have conflict in the world. The sense of self is what drives the conflict, because the sense of self wants things. The sense of self attaches to things. The sense of self is conceited. It thinks it is important. And all of these things lead to conflict with other people down the track. And so because the sense of self is a given in the world, conflict is also a given in the world. The only way to overcome the sense of self is personally, not in society as a whole. So this is why nowhere is unsettled, and there is nowhere any freedom from the conflicts and the problems. And then the Buddha to be goes on, but even in the settlement, the fight. So finally you think maybe you are going to find some home, but of course it's not a real home, and because it is not a real home, well, you continue your fighting. And seeing that, I grew uneasy. Then I saw a dart there, so hard to see, stuck in the heart. So even when you are settled, even when you think that there is some kind of escape from the problems in the world, still the fight continues. It still goes on. And saying that, the Buddha to be fear, then unease, looking for the solution. Why is this happening? And here is where the solution starts to come into view. So first of all, the Buddha analyzes the problem, and then looking for the solution. This is the Four Noble Truths, right? You have the problem, you have the illness, you have the disease, which is dukkha, suffering. Suffering is the issue. Why is there suffering? And that is looking for the solution, looking for the cause of the problem. And the cause here is the dart in the heart, so hard to see, stuck in the heart. This is the issue. There's a dart inside of everyone. That dart. And of course that dart is the dart of craving, stuck inside, which kind of makes life painful and difficult and then leads to all of these terrible consequences. When struck by that dart, you run about in all directions. Is that true? Do you run about in all directions like a chicken? But when that same dart has been plucked out, you neither run about nor sink down. So the dart of craving is what keeps us restless. The dart of craving keeps us agitated. The dart of craving keeps us endlessly running around, trying to find for a solution, always looking in the wrong place, never understanding where the solution actually is to be found, until the Buddha arises in the world and he points it out. Look, there instead, you're looking in the wrong place. Don't look for the solution to craving in the world outside. Don't look for it in trying to satisfy all your cravings. Look instead to pluck out that dart, to get rid of it. Then, when that dart is plucked out, then you neither run around, nor do you sink down. You don't flounder, you don't become depressed or sad or despair at the nature of the world. You don't want to commit suicide, and the vibhava tanha doesn't arise in you, because neither the tanha nor the vibhava tanha, the desire for doing things, nor the despair of wanting to end everything. So that is where the Buddha sees that solution to the problem. This is how you become the Buddha. You see the problem in the world, and then you find the solution to that problem. So this is more prison. You can see the prison here is kind of very obvious, being imprisoned by conflict and violence and all of these kind of things. And then the move out of prison is the removal of the dart. So that is only the first few verses, the first 5 verses or whatever of that poem. It is much, much longer. The second half of the poem is you're going to find out when? Second half of this retreat. So if you haven't signed up for the second half, you are going to miss out on the second half of this poem. So this is how I kind of get people to sign up for more later on. Anyway, so that is enough for this session. Let's have a short break, and then we'll come back in 5 minutes.
Good morning, Ajahn.
Good morning.
Ajahn.
Are you cold?
Yes.
You're cold? Okay, yeah, I can see you having the hood is on. Is everyone okay in here? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, because I for me this is perfect, but maybe for you it's a bit anyway, please, yeah.
Ajahn, how do we cultivate this similar sense of samvega like Buddha? I mean, okay, I have a little bit of anxiousness when the war happens there.
Yeah.
But then you'll be like, oh, so far away. I just wonder, but then when you raise that, what about it comes here, what about it goes there?
Yeah.
I mean, it just...
Yeah.
So, but still, there is still no such sense to push like Buddha. So how do we cultivate that?
So it is basically...
And at the same time, maybe Ajahn can share what is your sense of samvega that makes you just drop everything, the good, so-called the good life before,
Yeah. Well, so the first part is simply that, sometimes you see these things on TV, and a bit of fear arises, a bit of anxiety, a bit of concern, and that already is a sign that you understand that these things are bad. You know that these things are bad, and that concern means that you realize that the world is much more out of control than you think it is. You didn't expect this to happen. No one expects these things to happen, and that means that we haven't really understood the idea of impermanence. Wow, it's happening. Why is it happening? You thought it wasn't going to happen, and that was the mistake, to think it wasn't going to happen. So we have a delusion, an illusion that things are much more stable than they actually are. We are incapable, I mentioned this the other day, incapable of understanding the future. We think the future is more of the same, but actually it is not. The future is often quite different from what we have now. This is an understanding of impermanence. So whenever you turn on, the news or whatever, and you see things happening, that is an opportunity to wake up to the reality of things. So instead of getting too anxious, you think, wow, this is actually what the world is like. Why I've been fooling myself, thinking that it should be peaceful, it should be nice, it should be like this. It's just, I've been fooling myself. That isn't the reality of the world. The reality of the world is this uncertainty. You never know what's going to happen. And if it can happen in Ukraine, it can happen here. People are people everywhere. People have the same defilements. People are basically the same. So if it can happen in one place, it can happen in any other place. Even in Australia, you feel like in Australia you are on this island, you're far away. Still can happen there, in one way or another. And so this is kind of this wake-up call, this sense that actually all of these things that you take for granted are much less granted than you think they are. This is why I like the idea of Singapore, because Singapore is like this island of stability. It seems like really well run. But then suddenly one day Lee Kuan Yew passes away, and then things become much more uncertain, because he's kind of been this stabilizing force. I mean, even he can only stabilize so much, but at least he was quite stable. And his son takes over, and then they start to squabble between the siblings, and one of them runs off to London. You know that? The son, he had to seek asylum in the UK. That's kind of how it got, even in Singapore. So you can see how uncertain it is in a society that seems very stable, seems very well run. Even there are underlying issues. And so this is kind of the nature of the world, the name of the game. It is very uncertain. You just don't know what's going to happen next. And so you need to bring that reality in now. Actually, well, what if, this is part of the larger idea of contemplating death and contemplating all of these things, that the future is so uncertain. And the more you understand that, then the feeling that I cannot put off the spiritual path. I cannot put off practicing in the right way. Or today I just need to rob one more bank, and then tomorrow I stop robbing banks, right? If you think like that, you're doing it wrong. Now is the time to be kind. Now is the time to say words that are gentle, create harmony, that create all the good things in the world. Now, right now is the opportunity. I cannot wait 1 second. This is the idea of urgency. Urgency doesn't mean that you become a nun or a monk straight away. That's not kind of the idea. This just now is the practice. That's what it means. And it also means that you cannot afford to take one step back. You certainly cannot afford 3 steps back, but 1 step back also you cannot really afford. Because you understand things will change so quickly. I cannot afford to be angry with anyone. Why am I getting angry with people? Everyone is in this mess together. Everyone is suffering. No one really knows what's going on. We're all trapped in our delusion. It's crazy to be angry with people. If you are on your deathbed, are you going to have an argument with people? You're not. Maybe this one is, but no one else. You're not, and the point is that you are on your deathbed now. That's the point. This is the point of remembering these things, that now you are on your deathbed already, because you don't know when you're going to die. You don't know when that war is going to kind of happen. So if you are on your deathbed now, and you don't argue when you're on your deathbed, well, you shouldn't argue now. You shouldn't be angry now. You shouldn't do any of these kind of things. That's kind of the point. Yeah. And so this is how you make it alive. This is what we mean by urgency. It just means doing the right thing now, not tomorrow, not in an hour's time or whatever. So, so is that true, Venerable? You're going to have an argument on your deathbed? Yeah. Mara, with Mara. Okay, so it's like a good argument. It's kind of getting out of the problem. I see. Okay, good.
Good morning, Ajahn.
Good morning.
I was drawn to the stanza where it said, I grew uneasy. Then I saw a dart. So it's almost like, that's remarkable to me, because usually when I feel uneasy, what I want to do is get out of the uneasiness.
Yeah.
And the way to do that is to distract myself with worldly pleasures.
Yeah.
But in this instance, the Buddha to be, in that uneasiness, stemmed this ability to see, to look within, to see the dart within. And so that made me think that, is that why then the devas in the heavenly realms, in their enjoyment, with no uneasiness, then have less of an opportunity to see the dart. Whereas in the human realm, where we have more discomforts or uneasiness, there then is more opportunity for people to see the dart.
Maybe, yeah. But the thing is that, the point you make, first of all, is that when you feel uneasiness, you want to distract yourself. That is kind of the interesting one, right? Because that is the distinction. But you're not quite like that, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. If you just want to distract yourself, you would be out there somewhere in a restaurant and playing games or whatever. So the fact that you are here means that you have a bit of both. And we all have a bit of both, I think. Sometimes we need distraction, sometimes we're being more inquisitive and trying to find the causes and the solution. And this is what makes for a Buddha. He dares to ask the most profound questions of existence. Yeah? Why is there suffering? Why is there war? And lo and behold, he finds answer to these most profound, most existential problems of human life. That is what makes someone a Buddha. Yeah, it's kind of this unique thing here. And so I think in the heavenly realm, I think partly true what you say. But I think even in the heavenly realm it's possible to have that yoniso manasikara, that wise attention, that instead of papering over things through entertainment or whatever, you look for the solutions, you look for the causes of these things. It's possible. Like Sakka, the Lord of the Gods, he became a stream enter according to that sutta. Yeah, so that's kind of a very high insight. So sometimes you hear these things that it's impossible to make progress in heaven. It doesn't actually say that in the suttas. That's what's interesting. This is more like a popular idea in Buddhist culture, but there's very little evidence for that in the suttas. Maybe the commentaries say something to that effect, but the Buddha never said that. So, yeah.